Good morning and welcome to Missoula Real Estate Today. This is Denny Bedard. Missoula Real Estate Today is presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. Diane's been working with buyers and sellers in the Missoula market for over 25 years and shares her insights on the local housing market. Along with her trusted partners, Diane provides complete service for your real estate transaction and brings us guests who provide useful information on industry-related topics and trends. And now, Missoula Real Estate Today on News Talk, KGVO. Very nice to have you listening this weekend. We wish you a very wonderful and meaningful Memorial Day weekend. And thank you for joining Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck at Windermere Real Estate. And this week, Diane has invited members of WGM Group, Melissa Matassa-Stone, and Nick Kaufman, Planning, Engineering, and Environmental Company, WGM Group. And Melissa, I will welcome you and ask you first, what all does WGM Group do?
Thanks for having us, Denny.
You bet.
WGM Group does a range of land use planning, landscape architecture, civil engineering, environmental, survey services across mostly western Montana. And, really, we're in the business of community.
And what is your position with the company and what led you to Missoula and WGM?
I'm a partner with the company, a principal engineer, vice president, and I head up our environmental group. I've been with WGM Group for coming up on 15 years now, and I sort of lucked into finding WGM when I moved to Montana. I've had a great opportunity the last several years to help diversify the things we do and kind of come back to more of my roots on the environmental side of things.
Okay. Well, besides lucking into it, what was it about WGM Group that said, hey, this is where I want to be?
It's the people. There's we have a great team with who have the ability to really follow what their professional interests are, where I'm not stuck doing one thing day in, day out. We each have our own practices to do the things that we really care about.
Very good. Nick Kaufman, I'll ask you the same questions, what your position is with WGM and how did you get there?
Well, hey, thanks, Denny. It's nice to see you, and
Yes,
want to thank Diane Beck for having us today. So I started at WGM Group over 4 decades ago. I'm a land use planner, trained in engineering and also trained in land use planning. So what brought me to WGM Group is the ability to design and build community, in particular housing for families and create homes in the community, but also have done a number of industrial parks and commercial developments. WGM Group assists with institutional design and planning for both of our hospitals and the University of Montana and our fantastic school system as well.
So you were with the company kind of at its early stages. I know we're not right from the beginning, obviously, but you've been with them a pretty long time.
I hung around with them during the logging days when we had a lot of lumber mills in western Montana and worked doing forest development roads. Left them for a while, went back to school, got a master's degree, came back as a land use planner, and then worked mostly doing land development in and around western Montana.
All right. I'm sure when people hear planning and design, architect probably comes to mind, but how are you different and how are you similar?
We work closely with architects on a lot of our projects, especially the institutional ones and commercial ones that Nick was just talking about.
Right.
Where we differ is I think we function kind of in some cases before the architects come in. We're looking at a piece of property. What is the highest and best use for it? What opportunities, constraints do you see, both from the physical world but also cultural things like zoning and those different regulations? So sort of fitting the use and working with our clients' goals for a piece of property. Then we tend to follow up with the infrastructure. Now that you know what you want to do, how do you get your vehicles and your people there? How do you have water when you turn the faucet on? So that whole piece, sort of from beginning to end, as well as the survey part of creating the lots and making sellable pieces of land.
And how did the environmental concerns evolve within the company?
In a couple of different ways, where we have a water rights group that is really pretty active, both for kind of ranch-sized properties, that sort of thing, as people come in, but also working with municipalities as cities grow and there's more need for water. How is that provided legally and physically? We also do remediation work. So if you think of projects like the Riverfront Triangle area Or saw in the paper yesterday about the laundromat at Tremper's that's going to be, or the former dry cleaners, doing that assessment work up front to know what extent of contamination, if any, is there, and how do you redevelop in that context. Also on the environmental assessment side, it's part of that physical, what constraints are out there as you look at uses for land.
Let's take a walk through the process a little bit. A builder, a realtor, someone comes to you and says, I have this idea for a large-scale development of some kind, housing, shopping, entertainment. Where do you begin to play a part in that? What are kind of some of the first steps in your role?
Well, the first step in any role is to listen, Denny, you know that. And so when a client comes in, our first job is to listen to what their goals and objectives are. And if they've got a piece of property that's picked out, the first thing we do, it's a very disciplined process. We don't pull out the tissue paper and start sketching, which is the really fun part. There's a discipline that goes to that first. And so the first area of that discipline is to look at the physical characteristics of the property: soils, slopes, groundwater, floodplain, direction of the wind, all those things that relate to the natural environment. Wildlife, vegetation are part of that. The next thing then is to look at the cultural opportunities and constraints of the property. So what are the adjoining land uses? What does the growth policy say? What does the zoning say? Is there infrastructure? Do we have street, sewer, water, access? Reasonable expectation to develop the property the way the developer would like to. And so the next step in our process is education. So it's informing the developer on what is reasonable and physically possible for the site. And that's where we mold in the community goals and objectives that are reflected in the growth policy. In this case, it's our Missoula. 2015 is when that was done. And some of the philosophies of that, like build inward. So that's the nuts and bolts.
This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. My guests, Melissa Matassa-Stone and Nick Kaufman. They are with WGM Planning, Engineering, and Environmental Company. Can you give us a recent example? You had a long list of things there, Nick, most of them pretty obvious. Can you give us a recent example of your work that just almost all of that had to be implemented all at once?
You know, we've done a lot of pieces of work. And so I'll let Melissa chime in here with her projects too, but they all fit into the fabric of the community. And I'm going to start general. Missoula is really the last compact community in terms of large cities in the state of Montana. If you think about Billings and how Billings has grown out into the Heights and down across the Yellowstone River and out to Shepherd and onwards towards Columbus to the west, and our friends at Bozeman, Montana, that are knocking on the door of Manhattan at this point, and their residents are moving to Livingston to find housing and as far away as Townsend. Kalispell has moved all the way up to Evergreen and out to Whitefish and towards Columbia Falls. But Missoula remains a compact community in our geography. And part of that is because we plan well as a community, we invest and we implement. But as consultants in the community that are responsible to design neighborhoods and places where people work and places where people go to shop, our philosophy is to make sure that we are placemaking in our design so it fits within the fabric. So projects that we're really proud of are the old mill site downtown, which is a redevelopment of a former sawmill, 44 Ranch out on Mullen Road, which has over 220 homes for workforce in Missoula right now. You want to talk about some of the trails and transportation stuff?
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So some of the transportation work we've done recently is the design for Russell Street that's now underway, including the pedestrian bike underpass near Home Resource, which links into the Milwaukee Trail project, which we did a few years ago, going from Russell Street to Reserve Street, just bringing in those connectivity pieces that I think really contribute to our quality of life here.
Nick used the term compact community, and then you've mentioned a couple of examples of that's got to make a lot of things a little more difficult and challenging as far as when you know the community that you're living in and working with and working for, it's going to keep growing somewhere. But as you pointed out, because of geographical concerns, you just can't spray it anywhere and everywhere, right?
I'm not sure I like the word spray, but
Well, you think of a better one.
okay. So you have to plan for it. So Denny, what it is, what makes a community is just like any team. All right, you could do things on your own, and Melissa can do things on her own. But if you work together as a team, you find out you're more efficient and you do a better job. So if you look at local government and how they do their land use plans and how they implement that with zoning and capital facilities planning, and then as you bring your ideas forward to local government and you incorporate them as a team player, their expertise is in the regulatory environment. They administer those regulations. We comply with them, all right?
Sure.
And so we learn, and what we do is we open our designs and we welcome comment. And what it results then in is a final product that is a result of lots of people's input from the community as well as our firm. And it's reflected in the style of the projects that we work on and the fun we have while we do them. I mean, so often you'll hear people say, "Oh, how do you get through the process?" You know, "Oh my gosh, how do you do that?" Well, you do it by working together as a team, right? Private sector, public sector.
Community planning and design sounds like a a huge responsibility. You're not just designing for a client. You're trying to evaluate what's good for the whole. Is that a fair statement?
I think it is a fair statement, and as much as it's challenging, it's really rewarding too, because Nick and I both live here. Our
Sure.
coworkers too, where we have a real stake in what happens because this is our home.
And factors like property rights, public interest, things like that. Well, it's all got to get down on paper somewhere, huh?
It does, and as we look at the challenges our community's facing, like affordable housing, I think as we look at Build Inward, there's a lot of opportunity there where if we had the kind of valley that could sprawl like some of our other neighbors in the state,
Mm-hmm.
you'd see more costs to build, where more road, more infrastructure to maintain, just all the things that as there's more, it takes more to maintain them. So I like the opportunity of growing inward and having the opportunity with those type of projects to leverage investment by the city for brownfields, revitalizing properties, having the ability to improve infrastructure where it already is. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with the challenge.
So let's talk about the challenges for a minute. So let's take a neighborhood. Let's take Orchard Homes.
Please, yeah, great.
And so Orchard Homes, like most of the neighborhoods in Missoula, except for the primary city core, those folks bought their homes decades ago. They raised their kids. They're still there. As they mature, remember, 65 and up is the fastest growing segment of our population, right? And so those folks live in a neighborhood. But do they have housing opportunities in the neighborhood for when they are 55 and up or 65 and up or 75 and up in their neighborhood, right? And so we have a project right now we're working on over there for affordable housing. Typically, it would go to workforce. Typically, it would go to 55 and up, right? But specifically, we're looking at 55 and up for this one. And it allows people to stay in the neighborhood. But we have challenges with transportation infrastructure and congestion on our streets and roads and our signalized intersections. We have to figure out how to get water to the place, right? We have to figure out how to get sewer to the place. We have to work within boundaries and encroachments, and we have to work with neighbors that have invested their lives and their fortune in their neighborhood, and this is change. And all those things come into play when you do infill development. If you go out west to Mullen Road on a green field, right, where you bring in all your new infrastructure and you don't have to do the workarounds and spend money so much on the offsites, it's a different way to plan. But we can plan larger developments out west and have central parks and connectivity and grid system roads. Infill, we have to adapt to what's there, but we're very capable of doing that. It's just extra considerations.
This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guests this weekend, Melissa Matassa-Stone and Nick Kaufman with WGM Group, Planning, Engineering, and Environmental Company. You obviously work with the city a lot. What is your relationship with the city? Do you have a specific liaison? You obviously have to keep up with all sorts of ordinances and anything new going on, maybe some construction projects that were not necessarily on the calendar for a long time, but you must have to work with city government an awful lot before you can move forward to do what somebody has hired you to do.
You're absolutely right. City government, we work with a lot, and several of the departments, from the planning folks to, in development services through public works and engineering, and really across the broad range of other stakeholders who are interested in the success of the projects we're doing in town. I think we do a great job of, or we have great relationships with those folks because of our process of inviting in feedback and welcoming their input early in the process, as opposed to seeing it as adversarial. I think that builds trust, which goes a long way.
It does go a long way. And Denny, what we do at WGM Group, I mean, the real estate professionals in Missoula are outstanding. They're well-trained, they're well-experienced, they're very sensitive in terms of finding what they need for their clients. They do listen to us when we work with them as well. That creates an environment where we can go and meet. As an example, we meet with the folks at Windermere Real Estate once a year, and we give them an update on what's going on at the city, what's going on at the county, what's happening importantly in water rights laws or other things that are important. So we'll talk about the floodplain a little bit later in this program and the changes that are made to keep them updated and abreast of what's happening, because the regulations in this time frame are changing faster than we've ever seen them change. The townhome development regulations, as an example, have probably changed, the city's probably changed those 3 times in the last year and a half.
Why is that, Nick?
To respond to quality development and to meet their charge of protecting the public health, safety, and welfare as we create a built environment, Denny, that's going to be here for hundreds of years. When you look at Melissa and I, we make decisions. We make decisions about the form and shape of this community that will last for hundreds of years. We're not afraid to make those decisions. And the local governing body is not afraid to approve them. But they want to make sure that the public health, safety, and welfare is protected to reduce maintenance costs, problems, and concerns into the future.
Has there been, either of you can answer this question, or maybe neither one of you want to answer this question, I don't know. Has there been a proposed project in your career or careers that after thorough evaluation, your team just had to say, sorry, this will not work, and here's why? You're both hiding. All of a sudden, you're both hiding from me, right?
No, not at all. We're, one example of things I think in recent years we take closer and closer looks at is the floodplain, where we've seen spring flooding in recent years. In reaction to that, we saw this year the flood stage where the county started issuing warnings being lower than it has been in the past. So
by 2.5 feet, I think.
Yeah, but it went, I think, from 10 to 7.5.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the things we'll look at, for example, if there's a piece of property that's near the floodplain area, is taking a look both at the regulatory maps, but also using our expertise and other tools at hand to look outside those areas, just in terms of risk, where you may not be allowed to build here, but from a risk perspective, is it a good idea for your future owners, occupants, public health and safety?
Right.
And I think it's fair to say there have been times that we've parted ways, or a client has decided, gosh, you're right, that was my plan A, but that maybe isn't the best choice to make.
Right.
I don't know if, Nick, if you have a different example you'd like to share.
What I'll say is we are professionals. We didn't wake up one morning and decide that we were land use planners or engineers like Melissa is. We've worked hard. We've studied hard. We work really hard to stay contemporary, right, in our field. And we need to have clients that will trust us, believe in us, right,
Sure.
and listen in the critical areas to what we have to say. And where we part company, and we don't part company often, but when people are not willing to follow our advice based on not just education but experience, right, then we'll step back.
I think a lot of the questions I've asked you so far have been more structure related, and I don't want to dwell on that. But besides the obvious, what does landscape architecture entail?
So landscape architecture is how the built environment fits and is woven in to the natural setting of the land. So it's
Okay.
understanding the landform, understanding all of the physical features that we talked about before, and understanding how to place structures within their place in their setting so that they not only blend in, but that they function. And so that the surroundings around them can continue to function, right? But the new improvements function within that and function better, and they're in harmony. So you don't create grades that don't drain, right? You don't plant things that aren't sensitive to the wildlife and the habitat. You don't plant things that are going to get too big, so they have to be cut down in the future. But landscape architecture is about design and placemaking. It's not just about what kind of tree you're going to plant or where you're going to plant it. Landscape architecture is the integration of the cultural environment into the natural environment.
Have you encountered, as far as Missoula is concerned, any real unusual characteristics in that category? Stuff that you wouldn't necessarily see in a lot of different places?
Missoula has really interesting challenges in the realm of landscape architecture because the geomorphology and how the valley was formed, Denny, was a result of alluvial river-dominated sedimentation and carving out things in the valley over what was original hard rock mountains that heaved up to create the valley and then eroded down to what we got. So we have alluvial deposition, right? And we're blessed because that alluvial deposition allows our aquifer, our wonderful aquifer underneath this community that sustains us to be present. But at the same time, Lake Missoula filled and drained a whole number of times over the eons. So over the top of everything, we got 4 feet of clay, and then we got gravels and sands, and then we got 10 feet of clay, and just over and over again until we got 80 feet of clay out in the clay hills just out west of town.
Wow.
But all of this overlays different alluvial sedimentations, which are open graded gravels, like over around Strand Avenue in University area. It's all gravel. It's wonderful to build on. But in the foothills, right, as that lake filled and drained, just imagine all the erosion that happened as that waterborne sediment rolled over each other and created slumps, and then the lake filled up again, right? So the foothills around Missoula are absolutely unique. You dig a sewer trench, you go through 4 different types of materials: clay, sand, gravel, right? And among that then are interspersed potential for springs and groundwater like you have in the South Hills. So building around Missoula, right, because of the unique geomorphology, is unlike really any place else.
Good. Oh, interesting. This is Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate, and our guests are Melissa Matassa-Stone and Nick Kaufman from WGM Group, a planning, engineering, and environmental company. As a civil engineering company, you have to understand, and I think it was Nick that you talked about this a little bit, but you have to understand how a community will evolve to create projects that serve future generations. That is a big challenge. What do you rely on to forecast projects like that?
Yeah, one of the things we rely on is land use planning and land use. If we know what the projected density permissions are for an area, you can make a reasonable estimate of what sort of demand and population there might be in a place in the future. Then on the infrastructure side, we can size from both a development-specific area where, for example, what size water main do you need for these 40 units, but also the bigger backbone ones of, okay, this feeds into this larger system, and what might we see there? I really think it's that integration of land use planning and engineering that helps provide the background to inform how you design the systems.
So Denny, if you learn from the past, plan for the future, then imagine, right?
That's really good, Nick. Is that a Nick Kaufman original?
No,
or?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is, but I don't know where it came from. But if you look at the Missoula Valley, and you can plan for where growth should occur based on your ability financially to extend infrastructure into an area, and then you can plan that. So, as an example, out on Mullen Road, for more than 15 years, there's been an adopted grid system road plan, right, with some easements and right-of-way dedicated. and we're growing out there. And the community for 2 years has looked at first a Tiger grant and then a Build grant to put that infrastructure in. And they're going to take another run at it this year because they're serious about getting the transportation infrastructure in place as that part of the community grows. So it's land use planning, followed by capital facilities planning, followed by development, right?
Sure.
So if you've got infrastructure, if you've got sewer, water, and roads, development will follow that pattern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it increases the value of property. Talk to Diane about that. She'll reinforce that.
I'm sure she will, yeah. Realtors know that stuff, no doubt about it. I always like to ask my guests about success stories. You talked about a couple things earlier in the program, but are there some recent projects the WGM Group was pretty much involved with from start to finish that you are especially proud of?
Yeah, we mentioned some of our development projects, the old Sawmill District, 44 Ranch, and some of our transportation projects earlier. But another one where it's not quite complete, but I'm pretty proud of our ongoing work with is at the Missoula Fairgrounds.
Oh, sure.
As that grows and evolves, that's one where our landscape architecture folks have really, I think, played a big role in that design piece and fitting into a landscape. And that's one ongoing one that I'm excited to see the growing community benefit there.
Nice.
So, Denny, we talked earlier about training and keeping current, and I'll talk to our real estate community about that too, because it's really important how it all fits together. So, if you go out on Expressway and you look at two subdivisions on the north side of Expressway, sort of out by the airport, Canyon Creek Village and Windsor Park, you'd say, man, those are narrow streets, and you'd say, boy, oh boy. But if you drive through those are planned communities. Those are grid system roads. Those are 5-acre parks where the homes face the park, just like Bonner Park. Why is it important for homes to face the park? Because that creates the safety where children can play with eyes on the park. If you don't really understand how parks and development work, and you back a park up to the back of a line of lots, the private outdoor area is in conflict with the public outdoor space. You get a 6-foot-high fence and no eyes on the park, all right? When you develop those entrance roads that come in and out, as an example, in Canyon Creek Village, the road turns and you're looking right at Lolo Peak as you come out.
Yeah.
As you come in, you don't see the interstate highway to the north. You see the foothills, and the elk are up there, in certain times of the year. You create a place that works and functions. All the homes have front porches. The front porch is the linkage between the indoor living area and the social sidewalk out front. The outdoor living area is out back. That's where your private outdoor living area is. You create places for cars. So out there, we put them in the alley. So there's not driveways. So the kids are riding up and down the sidewalk, aren't crossing driveways where people back out. You see the conflicts? And so it's about creating efficiencies, but it's about creating placemaking. So I'm really proud of the traditional neighborhood design that you see out there. And Denny, it created homes for approximately 500 or 600 families in Missoula County. Here's the weight that we bear. We have 57,000 workers in Missoula County. 24%, or 17,200 of those workers, do not live in Missoula County. I don't think it's by choice. I think they would like to live here if they had homes and they had neighborhoods, right? And so we have a responsibility to plan to stay a compact community, but provide for the housing that we need and demand so we can have a diverse economy and continue to prosper.
Missoula Real Estate Today, presented by Diane Beck of Windermere Real Estate. A special thank you to some of Diane's marketing partners that helped bring you the show. Rob Fleming of Man Mortgage, Miles Link of Opportunity Bank of Montana, and Carol Blodgett from MakeItMissoula.com. We've been with Melissa Matassa-Stone and Nick Kaufman from WGM Group. Believe it or not, you two, we're down to like 1 minute. Is there anything real quick that you want to mention you got coming up, or just contact information and all of that?
I'd say thanks again to Diane for having us on today and your time this morning. The only other thing I think I'd add, just jumping on Nick's last comment about the affordable housing and placemaking, another project we've done recently is the Scott Street Villages, which I think really fell right in that and right in line with the North Reserve Scott Street overall planning we've done. But with that, I would just leave you with some contact information. You can find Nick, myself, or any of us at 406-728-4611, www.wgmgroup.com. on social media and at 1111 East Broadway.
On the beautiful Clark Fork River.
Nick Kaufman and Melissa Matassa-Stone with the WGM Group. Great job, you two. Thank you for coming in. Hope to see you again on the show sometime.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to Missoula Real Estate Today. We hope you found this morning's information to be helpful. If you have any suggested topics for any future Missoula Real Estate Today programs or any questions about buying or selling, contact Diane Beck with Windermere Real Estate. Email dianebeck@realtor.com or visit her website homesinmissoula.com. That's homesinmissoula.com. We'll see you next time on Missoula Real Estate Today.